So everyone always talks about Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau as the saviors of Star Wars, and for the most part, I would agree with you that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are going to save Star Wars to the best of their ability. But truly, I think that there is one savior of Star Wars, and that is Jon Favreau. Dave Filoni is kind of overhyped as being the savior of Star Wars, and he actually had a big part to play when it comes to the sequel trilogy. He had a lot of say in a lot of the things that we don't like about the sequel trilogy and why the sequel trilogy is so disliked by fans. Let's check it out. So like I said, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are 100% making very good Star Wars content, but Dave Filoni is not really the guy that everyone thinks that he is. I remember Ryan Kendall made a video a while back talking about this stuff, and it kind of blew my mind. You know, the fact that Dave Filoni isn't really what everyone makes him out to be, this, you know, Jesus Christ of Star Wars, George Lucas's apprentice, doing everything that George Lucas would do. And don't get me wrong, Dave Filoni is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to Star Wars. He knows more, he's forgotten more Star Wars than I will ever learn. There's no doubt about it. Dave Filoni knows what he's talking about when it comes to Star Wars, and really, he knows how to make good Star Wars content, but at the same time, he knows how to make bad Star Wars content too. He had a huge part to play in the creation of the sequel trilogy, and I'm not even a huge sequel hater. Whenever I hear the quotes that Dave Filoni said in the making and the creation of the sequel trilogy, this is straight from the creation or the making of the Rise of Skywalker book, and it talks about, you know, this was before, the quote that I'm going to show you in 1 second is before even The Force Awakens came out, whenever they're kind of drafting the overall template for the sequel trilogy, which, you know, we all know how that went. But the quotes that I hear him say kind of, you know, they've played right into the parts of the sequel trilogy that I don't like. The most important parts that really made me dislike the sequel trilogy. And like I said, not the biggest sequel trilogy hater, but I recognize that there's huge missed opportunities in the sequels, and also just things in the sequel trilogy that really piss me off. And Dave Filoni had a huge part to play in a lot of those things that really just pissed me off. And it's really shocking because, like I said, a lot of people are out there thinking that Dave Filoni is some savior of Star Wars. And I've always said that the savior of Star Wars is Jon Favreau. And yes, Dave Filoni, very knowledgeable, knows how to make good Star Wars content, but he's not the savior of Star Wars. Was Dave Filoni actually behind the Star Wars sequels? For part of it, he was. For most Star Wars fans today, their loyalty either lies with Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy, who has to sign off on the divisive Disney sequel trilogy, or with Dave Filoni, the Mandalorian executive producer and Lucasfilm executive creative director, who is, to many fans, saving the Star Wars franchise. And also, yeah, like I just said, he wouldn't have gotten that job, that executive creative director or whatever, the head of creative direction at Lucasfilm or at Star Wars, he wouldn't have gotten that unless he was somewhat on Kathleen Kennedy's side. But so what if the divide between Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni isn't as massive as fans like to think it is? Although Filoni wasn't officially in an executive position at Lucasfilm until his quiet promotion in mid-2020, he held a great deal of sway over the fandom thanks to his time working on the animated series Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels well before The Mandalorian existed. There is no doubt that Filoni's opinion was taken into consideration at some capacity as the Star Wars sequels, The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker were in development. As a matter of fact, Filoni confirmed that he did some character development with the Lucasfilm story group. Last year, Reddit user Darth Vader posted a photo from a page of Doug Chiang and Phil Szozak's book, The Art of the Rise of Skywalker, in which Filoni spoke specifically about helping to create a character arc for the legacy characters, specifically Princess General Leia Organa Solo. And here is a screenshot of the book from The Art of the Rise of Skywalker where Dave Filoni talks about this stuff. And this quote is so infuriating because I played into the narrative too. I read into the narrative too that Dave Filoni is the savior of Star Wars, that him and Jon Favreau are working together. And they are. You know, at the end of the day, they are making very good Star Wars content. Season 7 of The Clone Wars, very good Star Wars content. Obviously, The Mandalorian Season 1 and 2, probably the best Star Wars content that we've gotten since the Disney purchase. Maybe you could argue Rogue One or whatever, but Dave Filoni is behind most of the best content that we've gotten from the Disney purchase, but he's also behind some of the worst stuff that we've gotten from the Disney purchase as well, and it makes me worried for the future, and I'll tell you why in 1 second. Let's check out this quote from Dave Filoni talking about the sequel trilogy. We should shift it so Leia is the Obi-Wan of this entire trilogy. I wouldn't mind that. I don't even think that it hurts that she's not primarily the mentor figure in 7, because like John Nolan talking about, had been saying, the audience expectation is so on Luke, and when that proves not to be true, it's way more powerful. It's dangerous because it makes it so about the women of Star Wars. Speaking of both Leia and Rey, something to me says that's right. And that's exactly that the Lucasfilm story group would say, something that Kathleen Kennedy would say, the Force is female. we know how this stuff works. You know, maybe Dave Filoni is in there just saying stuff so that he gets promoted, just saying stuff so that he can get in a position of power. But at the end of the day, if you get in a position of power and then you don't, you know, hold true to your words, if you don't carry through with these promises that you're making, this stuff about saying that it makes it so about the women of Star Wars, and something to me says that's right. If you get promoted and then you don't push forward the women of Star Wars, you're going to get demoted or possibly even fired. But he's not just doing that. We see this picture right here says it all. He is obsessed with Ahsoka. He is going to put Ahsoka in every single thing that he possibly can. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with females being in Star Wars. That's not what I'm trying to say. But after seeing quotes like this, it makes it so about the women of Star Wars. It's worrying. It's worrying for the future of Star Wars. It's worrying for the future of this content that we think is going to save Star Wars, but it might very well do the same thing, or a lot of the same things that the sequel trilogy did. I think no matter what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni does, or no matter what Dave Filoni goes off and does with the Ahsoka series, because he's kind of doing that by himself. He's not really doing that with Jon Favreau. I'm sure Favreau has a little bit of part to play in that show, but Filoni is writing that show, maybe even directing that entire show by himself. That's kind of Filoni's little project, because Ahsoka is Filoni's character. He's, you know, obsessed with Ahsoka, like I said before. It makes me very scared after seeing quotes like that about what Filoni is going to do with the Ahsoka series. It won't be as bad with the Ahsoka series because she's a female and it's her series, so she's supposed to win. But I'm scared about what he's going to do for the future. You know, we're going to see stuff like what happened with Loki, when he just loses over and over again, or pretty much every man, him and Mobius, just lose to the females over and over again. Literally, Loki gets put into a time loop where he loses to a female over and over again. It's laughable. You know, I want to enjoy the show, but it's just laughable with the stuff, some of the stuff that they put in there. But Filoni has always been keenly in tune with the women of Star Wars. He even developed Ahsoka Tano, obviously with George Lucas. So it's certainly interesting to get his new take, or to get his take on how the sequels were intended to be received, even though that clearly didn't play out the way he, or presumably the story group, planned. Yeah, it is very interesting, but it's also, you know, it's very worrying because we don't really care. I don't want to care. I don't want to have to care about whether it's about the men of Star Wars or the women of Star Wars. I just want to watch Star Wars. Is that like too much to ask for? Does it have to be women versus men at all times? Can we just have Star Wars? Is it really, you know, that important to have women versus men always? Recently, another Reddit thread has surfaced in which Star Wars fans discuss exactly how much control they believe Dave Filoni had over the sequel trilogy. The original poster, a user going by your best friend Shane, wrote, "This is a real world movie making analysis. I'm interested in more information. How much input did Dave Filoni and the story group have itself in the sequel trilogy? Do we know much of his stance on them? Does he have a favorite, least favorite? Is he interested in adapting them to the galaxy, or does he prefer to push back? Not that I believe he does, but that's what certain theories postulate. I think it's good to speak on the material we have and put it all out there for the clarification." Now, with this all being said, I do believe that Dave Filoni is on our side. I just don't think that he is this perfect person, this great savior of Star Wars like everyone thinks he is. I don't believe him to be that. I think that that's Jon Favreau. I think that without Jon Favreau by Dave Filoni's side, Dave Filoni would do a lot of the same things. He would have a lot of similar themes to the sequel trilogy. That's what I believe. I have all my faith, all my eggs are in Jon Favreau's basket. I believe that Jon Favreau is the true savior of Star Wars, and I think, like I said, I don't think that it would be much different from the sequel trilogy without him. The quality would be better, the storytelling would be better, but in terms of the underlying themes of women versus men at all times would probably be there if Dave Filoni was simply in charge. But I think that Dave Filoni is on our side. This clip right here proves it. I'm sure a lot of you remember this clip from back when it came out. We all talked about it. It's pretty much Dave Filoni saying he's not really affiliated with the High Republic at all, after this guy right here asked him if they'll be seeing any, you know, crossovers with the High Republic stories in the Mandalorian universe. Let's check it out.
My pet monkey lizard. Not a pet. You're a pet. Anyway, I've really been enjoying the new High Republic era literature, and my question is there a chance that that era will be explored further through live action or animated series?
You know, I can't really say for sure, but I know one thing is that we've divided Star Wars up into these big eras, and so it's nice to give a lot of creative people their own space to tell stories in, and so the writers in the High Republic era are doing a wonderful job at that, and, you know, we all keep an eye on what each other's doing, so you never know. I mean, it's a big galaxy, and it's ever expanding.
In other words, no. In other words, he wants to stay very much far away from the High Republic, and I don't blame him. It's a dumpster fire over there. A lot of people, a lot of Star Wars fans aren't liking what they're seeing over there. Some people are telling me that there's good books every once in a while, but the people that are involved in the High Republic are just bad people that care about the total wrong things. They care about the politics way more than they care about the storytelling, and that's the main problem. It's been said a million times. People need to start caring about the stories that they're telling, and maybe if they really care about a cause, you can put it in there as an underlying theme. Support your cause, that's fine. But when your cause starts to take over the entire story, when your cause becomes the main purpose for making a story and a franchise that I love, that's when I start having a problem with it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think about Dave Filoni not really being the savior of Star Wars like everyone thinks he is? I still think he's on our side now. I think that Jon Favreau kind of changed his mind. I think that with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni's knowledge, and Jon Favreau's knowledge of the fandom, Dave Filoni's knowledge of Star Wars, Jon Favreau's knowledge of the fandom and where Star Wars truly needs to go in terms of, how much politics need to be pushed in it, I think they're going to make some great stuff. And I think that Dave Filoni is a great storyteller. I think that Dave Filoni will make some good Star Wars content. And I think that he will, along with Jon Favreau, end up saving Star Wars. But I think that Jon Favreau is the true savior of Star Wars. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter or join the Discord, both of those links will be in the description as well. Thank you for watching the video. I hope to see you in the next one.